Today we will be talking about youth travel industry, which is actually worth 173 billion US dollars, and we will be talking about what opportunities and what benefits you, be it government organization or association or individual business, you can find in this industry. This is a tailor-made presentation for this occasion or this event specifically. We will be talking about where the industry is and where it is going. It should create a material for further discussion or a panel we will be having right after this presentation. And if you like to take a note, you are very welcome, but the PowerPoint presentation will also be available either at our website or on a request by email. Okay, so let me start with the presentation outline. So we have 4 parts, except the panel at the end. So we will be talking about, first we start with market features, so sort of introduction, where we are, who we are, what's going on. Then we will go to market overview, so down to different various sectors, so that we see what's going on in terms of market size, market value, market performance in different sectors. Then we will talk about drivers of growth or drivers of industry performance and current trends. And finally, we will elaborate what's the next big thing in youth travel as such. I will take this presentation from a researcher and business developer point of view. My colleagues in office have helped me to prepare the presentation so that it can help to succeed, to help government organizations and individual businesses to succeed in international student market by providing the knowledge or identifying the opportunities or later on to facilitate the connections to youth travel. So let's start with the youth travel market, the first of 4 sections I mentioned at the beginning. We put together almost 600 sources and resources that we monitor, analyze, and provide outcomes from. And based on this huge research, after already 12 years in this business, we finally are able to measure the industry and sectors. Therefore, we are able to spot the opportunities and develop the businesses in this industry. So let's start with some fast facts. The market size now is close to 200 million international trips. The market value is 173 billion, calculated in US dollars. The target group, so youth population aged 15 to 29, is 1.8 billion, so even more. Then it's the percentage of youth travelers within global travel, which is 20%, but the youth population is 25%. The average spending per trip, as you can see, what's going on here? Sorry, why didn't you tell me? Okay, sorry. So market size, market value. This is the target group. Now we're going to average spending per trip, which is from $1,000 to $6,000. We cannot put the average over here because it depends on sector. The leisure travelers spend less than those who are studying abroad. But basically the message is that the youth travelers spend over $1,000 in average, which is more than global tourists. So just to show you the basic thing, that youth travelers are not cheap travelers, not budget travelers, that probably might be thought, but they spend more than the global travelers. The average length of trip is from 10 to 53 days. Again, the average varies according to sectors. Again, it's more than global tourists. The industry has close to 300 associations, so it has its own life and regulations. And there are approximately 40,000 businesses in this industry. I'm talking about the providers, tour operators, sending organizations, service providers, media, event organizers. So altogether, there are approximately 40,000 organizations and businesses. So now we're going to market value. So what's the size of the industry? And we prepared a comparison so that you can see where the youth and student travel industry stands. So at the beginning, we calculated what's the market value of top 20 football or soccer clubs, if you have guests from North America. It's 6.3 billion. Okay, I will skip some of them, but you can see NASA budget, or McDonald's, or music industry, which is 68 billion, or Facebook, or Argentina budget as a country, and we are still not getting to youth travel. So you can see that 173 billion industry is probably not a market niche any longer. It probably deserves an attention of those who might want to make some connections or money in this industry. As we speak about the youth travel market, we cannot omit the connection with global tourism. So let me just give you two points. One, that the global tourism is obviously a framework in which youth travelers exist. On the other hand, the youth travelers of today are the future global or business travelers for the future. So whatever the businesses or organizations do with youth travelers can then benefit in future in a repeated business or like brand loyalty, etc. Also, as you can see over there, estimated long life budget for a traveler is 40 to 120,000 US dollars. So once you do business in youth travel, you can be at the beginning of this chain where you can influence the purchasing behavior or the brand loyalty of the future travelers that will spend this money in their upcoming years. The other connection is that youth travel currently accounts for 20% of global tourism, but in some countries already, like Germany, it's 25%, and it's catching up to 25% everywhere. So youth travel is not only a huge part of global tourism, but it's increasing part of it. So it is expected that by 2020 it will be 25% of global tourism. Something about the structure of youth tourism. As you can see, we have youth travelers and the arrow down to program providers, so the end customer to providers. In between that, we have youth and student travel agencies. We will be talking about them. All together with youth and student travel organizations like associations or regulatory bodies, etc., plus service providers, so suppliers. This industry, as I mentioned, has its own life, so it has its own associations, own events, own media, own agencies, but not as much, or let's say not only its own life, it is connected to other industries like global tourism, or transportation, etc. So, naturally, institutions or organizations from outside of industry or youth travel industry are somehow related to youth travel, be it governments that regulate this industry or have regulations for these companies, what to do, not to do, and then mainstream brands, meaning the global tourism brands increasingly more important or more interested in youth travel. Let me give you two examples of each. When it comes to these international organizations, not saying government, but international organizations interested in youth travel. Let me just mention UNWTO that recently joined initiatives with Wise Travel Confederation and launched the Power of Youth Travel publication. That is the first sign. They also came for their event. So the leading global tourism organizations coming to leading youth travel association, trying to find ways how to work together. So this is one of the examples that the global interest of global tourism and youth tourism. And then we have several case-by-case examples in commercial sphere, like big brands like we will see later on TUI or even Manchester United or Microsoft are putting fingers in this industry and trying to taste the waters and get the benefits out of this actually quite valuable, not anymore market niche. This is the overview of market performance. So you can see basically that now we're counting close to 200 million arrivals as opposed to 2004, which is 8 years or 7 years back, we were counting 150 million trips. So there have been increase of 50 million new trips in 7-8 years. Now we prepared the breakdown to purpose of travel, so sectors. These are two measurements that we can, or the industry can offer. And as you can see, basically 2/3 of young travelers travel for leisure. So holidays or relax. So 1/3 is so-called meaningful travel, to study abroad, to explore, to experience, work abroad, internship abroad, adventure, etc. So these are those who would like to do some experience abroad. In terms of revenue, this was about numbers of arrivals. When it comes to revenues, it's vice versa. The leisure travelers represent 1/3 of revenues of this industry. The meaningful travel, though, represents 2/3 of revenues in this industry. Okay? What are the main source markets in youth travel? I will start from the right. These are the numbers from, so the total number of 180 million, that when the statistics was done, so the 100% is 180 million arrivals, or departures in this case. Europe represents 2/3 of the market, almost 2/3. So at that time, 100 million. And out of that, you can see a breakdown of the top senders of youth travelers aged 15 to 29. So obviously, Germany as the top sender in global tourism is a top sender in youth travel as well. Then UK, France, surprisingly high is Russia, Italy, Spain, Netherlands, and also another country from Eastern Europe, Poland. Then you can see the other ones. So this is the top senders within Europe and from Europe. Let me give you last slide about the market features. What are the population prospects? Let's say not very positive, but so the youth population will not rise from 2015 onwards due to demographics worldwide, especially in China. Therefore, the pool of potential individuals will not increase in terms of individual bodies, let's say. On the other hand, the disposable income is increasing rapidly. So, for example, in Eastern Europe, the young people can afford 3 times more now than they could in 2001. Okay? So actually the pool of potential used customers is rapidly increasing. But you should be aware that there will not be more people coming to this target group in terms of numbers of individuals, but there will be more travelers as they can afford more, and they have less barriers now than they had 10 years ago. We will get there. But so, what is the next big thing in youth travel? To narrow it down and keep it simple, and we will elaborate it in many more details, it's a progressive growth. It's something the industry will not only grow, but will increasingly grow, and more than other industries. Let me explain what I'm talking about. You can see the green line shows the market development so far, so where the youth travel industry has been so far, and the orange one is showing where it will be in 2020. Can you see that? Okay. So there is a huge increase. There will be 100 million new arrivals in only 8 years to come. So now we are at 169 million and 163 billion revenues, going to 300 million arrivals and 320 billion revenues. So you can pretty much imagine the market opportunity in this industry. Not only it's quite significant now, but it will be almost double the size, and only in 8 years. So let's go down to sectors so that we can talk about this growth, where it is coming from, what drives it, where you can find the opportunity and benefit your government, organization, or business. So let's start an overview with sectors. The leisure travel, so the one that creates 2/3 of the arrivals. As you can see, the third of it, the purpose of travel is sun and beach, probably lower than people think, because the city breaks and tours are quite significant, as you can see over here at the graph. Educational travel. Educational travel, so meaning people travel abroad to learn language or to study at a high school or a university. So basically those who stay abroad for a certain time to spend their time and learn language or educate themselves at the secondary or tertiary level of education. This sector is by far the best performing in youth travel. Not only it is growing constantly, resilient to economic downturn, you don't see any downturn during 2008, 9, and 10. But it's also the highest revenue earner. Now it's worth 64.6 billion out of those 173 we talked about earlier. What is happening though in this sector is that the traditional destinations, which is UK in language travel and US in higher education, are losing their position rapidly. And new hosts, new destinations emerging on expense of these traditional destinations. So as you can see, US as a study destinations for tertiary students is down 28.6% in the last 8 measured years. And UK as a leading language travel destination is going down 34.1% in the last 4 measured years. Now we'll be talking about backpacking and flashpacking. Backpacking is a true youth travel sector. As you can see over there, what are the preferred destinations, but even more the graph next to it. The share of youth backpackers, the share of youth in backpackers is quite huge. In New Zealand, it's almost 80%, Australia 76%, South Africa 70%, meaning that when we talk about backpackers, we mostly talk about youth travelers. And what I have to say over here within this slide is the fact that backpacking probably 10 or more years ago, part of my language was probably a matter of few people, budget travelers or explorers, or those who were sort of different from the mainstream or the average travelers. But now budget travel or backpacking has reached sort of normal status. It's not a matter of some, but a matter of critical mass. And it's pretty much in line with what I mentioned about youth travel, that these young travelers want to explore and experience abroad. Therefore, backpacking is really rocketing in these days. I would say education and backpacking are the strongest or the most rapidly increasing sectors in youth travel. Volunteer travel. This sector increased the most, however, it's still counting small number of travelers. What you can see is the number of volunteer organizations that increased rapidly in the last 10 years, or let's say 15 years. And you can see an example as a case study of the leading portal for international students or travelers, goabroad.com, that we measured how many programs they promote in 2005 and now, and you can see that there's a huge increase in number of programs they promote, and it's not only because of them, but because of the market demand that is over there. Actually, the economic downturn, economic recession fueled the progress and development in this sector. Some city firms in London at that time offered funds for their employees, young employees, of those who work for the first year or the beginners, up to £10,000 to spend a year abroad. So naturally, it came to that there were almost 200,000 volunteers in UK at that time, and over 1 million in US. So, ironically, the economic recession helped this sector to boom. Now we're going to use travel accommodation, which we compare to hotel industry. Basically, hostel or youth travel accommodation sector done very well. Not only they maintain the prices quite well and increase them year on year during the economic downturns, but they also did well at the same time in terms of occupancy rates, which when you put these together, prices and occupancy rates, which you can see are doing better than the hotel industry, you can imagine how hostel or youth travel accommodation sector can be doing in these days pretty well. So what are the growth contributors? Naturally, there are many of them. We just name, because of the time constraints we have over here, just 6 of them. And we will go down or elaborate these 6 a little bit more so that we create a material for further discussion with our panelists. So, we will start with emerging markets. I would say emerging markets are the strongest driver of youth travel industry. As you can see, this is a general comparison in terms of developed or advanced countries and developing or emerging countries in 2010 and 2012. And as you can see, the developed countries were the ones who had the biggest share of global import. But now, in 2012, we are, in general, in 2012, in a turn point. This is the year when emerging countries will have a bigger share of global import than the developed countries, which is an important message for everybody who is doing international business, where to be. So the BRIC countries, naturally, then the slimmer countries, so Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Malaysia, Mexico, and Argentina, Eastern Europe, these are the countries that drive the growth. To give you a better picture, you can see a rising of middle class worldwide. This is one of the most favorite slides of me. And so let me explain a little bit. The full circles show where the middle class is now, and the outer circle shows where the middle class in those regions will be in 2030. Do I need to explain that? So as you can see, North America or Europe have quite a huge middle class already, but won't go anywhere. As opposed to Asia, which will go from current 500 million to future 3 billion people in middle class by 2030. And we all know, once people are in the middle class, they become an average spender or average customer. So these are all our potential clients, aren't they? So when I was talking about youth travelers and or young people, how many they are, and youth travelers, how many they will be, this is what we can expect. A huge increase of middle class, therefore also youth travelers, and especially in Asia. To give you another picture about emerging markets, as emerging markets are catching up the development with advanced countries. So this is a market performance of advanced countries. So as you can see, the orange one, where it is in terms of arrivals. And now you can see performance of emerging countries. When you compare the gap in 2000, for example, it's 2 times higher than the gap now in 2012. And it will be closed very shortly, and the emerging countries will also catch up with the advanced countries in tourism. Now let's talk about the second driver. Only one slide over here. And this is about using student travel agencies or student tour operators, if you wish. This is a worldwide map of all 26,000 student retailers who deliver over 50% of all bookings in this industry, and the situation is not changing. I mean that the usage of agencies or tour operators through whom the bookings are coming is increasing, not decreasing in youth travel. It's very different from global tourism, where the number of online bookings is rising 2 times faster than the industry itself. Youth travel is different. Most bookings are coming through tour operators and agencies, and it's increasingly more. Let's do the third. Mergers and acquisitions, or interest of governments and international institutions in youth travel. I will just comment the second and third bullet point. You can read it. I don't need to comment everything, I guess. When it comes to governments and international organizations, as I said, they started to recognize the size and significance of this industry. One of the examples was the UN-WTO Vice Travel Confederation joint publication, The Power of Youth Travel. You can see the slide over there. Also, the European Union is launching European Year of Volunteering, for example. They have youth activity program as well. So we see increasingly more interest of the governments or international institutions in youth travel. And then commercial institutions, as I said. So Microsoft joint powers or a cooperation with ISIC, or Manchester United is launching soccer summer camps in language travel, so they combine English and language. Or TUI is also already having 20% of their brands, or close to, in youth travel. So they are, and we can go on and on. Bottom line, they are, probably, this is just an estimate, probably 3 times more mergers and acquisitions in youth travel in last 2 years than they were in previous decade. Let's use this case study, so youth and student travel brands in TUI. So as I said, out of all their brands, they have 20% offering youth and student travel, as it looks like from the publicly accessible data. So in educational travel, in adventure travel, in volunteer travel. So basically these big brands are coming to youth travel, bringing new ideas, new capital, which actually will enhance the growth of youth travel even more. And their interest actually means that there is something in that industry, isn't it? So they wouldn't come if it is not valuable, beneficial, or profitable. So every day, our team monitors over 80 industry media in youth travel and global travel, and every day we read about some mergers and acquisitions in the media across the industry. So this is for sure a case in current days. Governmental engagement. Actually, just a simple statement or idea. The traditional destinations currently dwell in a re-evaluation phase, rephrasing regulations, policies, standards, because they are in a position, they have quite numerous international population coming to their countries. So be it UK or US, they are in a situation where they regulate increasingly more. On the other hand, emerging destinations, they have intensive marketing investments and easing regulations to gain more market share and international students. That's why the pie, why the ring is changing. And the traditional destinations are not so much increasing as the emerging destinations, So this is a case when we come to later discussion. Then we go to diversification. This is what is happening in this industry. When we done several studies to observe the industry, there is diversification in portfolio. So former specialists in educational travel now also do work experience sectors or leisure travel. So they extend their portfolio because these youth travelers just start the traveling behavior. So the research shows that obviously once the youth travelers start to travel, they want to repeat that. And the more the tour operators offer, or the more the providers are involved in, the more they can get from the repeated traveling of the individual they catch or capture at the beginning. So that's why businesses extend their portfolios. Destinations, as I mentioned, diversification is caused by the situation that the emerging destinations are rising faster than traditional destinations. Therefore, the pie is different with many new players. Then booking channels are a matter of diversification. So as I said, traditionally agencies, tour operators, but then online bookings or online inquiries are quite strong. We will get there 2 or 3 slides from now. Then direct bookings at spot, so people, for example, already being in US, booking for the institutions being in US, etc. So there are new and new ways how to market and how to get the bookings in nowadays times. And then obviously source markets. It depends on sector, but the traditional senders for let's say work experience sector, like work and travel programs, internship programs, work and holiday programs are changing so quickly that the strong senders from 10 years are not even a considerable senders in these days. Okay, when it comes to language travel, then Asia was quite a strong sender. Now it's not rising so quickly, just 6.3% in last 3 measured years, but the other regions like Middle East, Latin America are the biggest senders. So, or the senders with the highest increase. So we have diversification in all fields. What does it mean? It means it creates more ideas, more capital, more mergers and acquisitions, more youth travelers, more stakeholders being involved, etc. As you can see, finally it benefits the industry, bringing more business and more capital, more money to this field. And the last driver I'm going to mention is that nowadays youth travelers have many less barriers to travel. So, for example, transportation. It's much cheaper to travel abroad than it was 10 years ago. You can see an increase of low-cost carriers in last years, and it increased by 182% in what, 7, 8 years? 6 measured years. When you look at the next graph, then you can see what's the dollar value over there increase. Basically, youth travelers can travel cheaper and more. Moreover, they have less barriers in terms of language. Oh, sorry. This graph shows how many English learners there are in the world, estimated, because the calculation is pretty difficult over here. Basically now, or in 2011, we were in a situation that we were on a peak of how many English learners they were in the world. Now it will be going down because it has reached a critical mass. What I want to say is that when you look at the 2010 and 2000, there are almost 2 times more English learners than there were in 2000, meaning that over 800 million people had less barriers to travel if they speak English. Not only they, like when my older friends wanted to travel to Sweden 10 years ago, they said, I have the money, I have the appetite, but I can't speak English. How can I travel there? Now it's not the case. People can speak English, both themselves and the destinations. So it's much easier to travel. People are more motivated to travel, and therefore easier to spend. And they also have less barriers in terms of fear. Okay? Just consider, 80% of youth population goes online before they go to Stone office or Stone shop. So they do their research. 50% of bookings or inquiries or any walk-ins are done based on research, based on word of mouth, so recommendations. And we're talking about young travelers who are usually first-time purchasers of overseas services, something very far, far away, not a commodity, etc. And internet has changed a lot in this sense, okay? A young traveler of today has so much information about the destination he wants to go to, about the provider, about the agency or tour operator using, up to a visual presentation of where he's going or she's going. I mean, either be it hotel or resort or school or teachers. Then he or she can read the customer reviews and learn about the providers or product knowledge from previous customers. Therefore, they have more information, less fear, and less barriers and more appetite to travel. Much different from 10 or 20 years ago. So this was it for those 4 sections, and now I will conclude it with only one slide. About what is the next big thing to name certain areas and start the discussion or the panel then, okay? So, first of all, the first recommendation, based on all the knowledge we monitor, you should be in youth travel. You have $100 billion in upcoming 8 years. Then, should you be in youth travel, you definitely should be involved in meaningful travel, in meaningful sectors, because they represent 2/3 of the receipts. So, educational travel, backpacking, volunteering, etc. When it comes to destinations, of course, it depends on sectors, which are the good ones to be in. But basically, the recommendation would be, do not focus on traditional destinations only, but consider also alternative destinations that are rising now and will become very strong very soon. When it comes to source markets, then emerging markets should be your focus. So basically BRIC and SLIMA, and some other individual countries for individual sectors. We can discuss it at the panel. When you enter or you are in youth travel, do not be afraid, but get advantage of youth travel agencies, because you as a provider can get a lot of business. And if you are a tour operator, either in mainstream or youth travel, then be aware of your situation. You are very powerful over here. If you are not in youth travel, you should be, because you will be in much better position in youth travel, because you are so valued, because over 50% of booking go through agencies, and it's increasing. But besides working with tour operators and agencies, you should be online. If you are not online and if you not provide who you are and what you offer and you are reliable, then people will turn back to you. Okay. So once again, the graph about the difference and opportunity. Thank you very much for coming over here, for the attention. Thank you very much.